One day, someone might say to you very calmly, "You can trust me." Most people feel relieved when they hear this sentence, because trusting is the foundation of human relationships, friendship, love, business, family. They are all built on trust. But here's a disturbing question. Is trust really something earned? Or do people often give trust to the wrong individuals? Think for a moment. Most of the people who harmed you in your life, how did they look at first? Like enemies? No. Most of the time, quite the opposite. Sincere, interested, close, maybe a friend, maybe a lover, maybe a colleague. And most of the time, the harm comes from the people you trust. This video is about a disturbing warning Machiavelli made regarding human nature. Machiavelli was not someone who examined people through a romantic lens. He examined people as they are, and he asked this question: who should you not trust? This video explains the 6 types of people you should never trust according to Machiavelli's warning. But this list is not for giving moral advice. It is for understanding human behavior. Because sometimes the biggest mistake is not being unaware of the existence of bad people. It is being unable to recognize them. People learn to trust, but not in the way you think. What makes someone trustworthy is often not character, it is perception. The human brain categorizes people very quickly. Trustworthy, dangerous, one of us, not one of us. Most of these decisions are made within seconds. A person's smile, their tone of voice, their body language. But there is a big problem here. These signals can be easily imitated. People can learn to appear trustworthy. But being truly trustworthy is something very different. That is why the disappointments people experience are mostly caused not by their enemies, but by the people they trust and love. This is more jarring. Machiavelli, therefore, looks at what people do rather than what they say. And he concludes, there are some people. Trusting them is almost always a mistake. Has there been someone like this in your life? From the first moment you met, overly interested, overly kind, overly helpful, always praising you, always agreeing with you. At first glance, this looks very nice, but Machiavelli says care must be taken here, because some people don't do good, they appear to be doing good. Their goal is not to help, but to get close. And the fastest way to get close to people is to make them feel good. In psychology, this is sometimes called ingratiation, the strategy of winning hearts. Someone appearing close to you does not always mean sincerity. Sometimes this is just a strategy. People don't realize this, because feeling good makes it harder to doubt. When someone constantly praises you, a part of your brain thinks, this person really understands me. But Machiavelli asks another question. Why is a person putting in this much effort for you? Has there ever been someone you thought was a very good person? If you observe carefully, you can see certain strange behaviors. But this thought, the "he is a very good person" thought, can prevent you from seeing this in most cases. And you may realize the truth later. If you have had such an experience, you can talk about your story in the comments. Truly trustworthy people usually do not look this perfect. Sometimes they don't agree with you. Sometimes they say no to you. Sometimes they criticize you. But people who constantly look good are often playing a role. And people who play roles usually want something. Think of a conversation. A friend tells you about the problems in their life. Why did they leave their old job? The boss was bad. Why did the ex-lover end it? The other side was problematic. Why did friends distance themselves? They were jealous. Almost every problem in their life is someone else's fault. At first, these stories might seem logical, but Machiavelli points out an important pattern here. People who are constantly victims are often untrustworthy, because someone who does not take responsibility does not change their behavior, and someone who does not change their behavior recreates the same problems. In psychology, this is sometimes called self-serving bias. But some people take this tendency too far. For them, the world is a place that constantly does injustice. There is one thing in common in these people's stories: they are always right. But Machiavelli asks, if a person attributes all the problems in their life to others, who is the common point? You might be empathizing with people, but this is not always healthy, because you would have analyzed that person incorrectly or not at all. Constantly blaming people are untrustworthy, because one day you too could be in that story, and then the villain of the story becomes you. People sometimes think, this person tells me a lot, so they trust me. But Machiavelli interprets this differently. If a person tells you other people's secrets, it shows something very simple. That person does not keep secrets. Some people bond by sharing information, but this is also a breach of trust. Someone who tells someone else's secret today can tell yours tomorrow, because the problem is not the person, it is the behavior. In psychology, one of the strong indicators of trustworthiness is information control. A person telling you everything does not show they are trustworthy. Sometimes it just shows they are uncontrolled. Throughout my life, I've tried to stay away from people who talk to me about the private lives of others, because I think someone who shares someone else's private life out of place might display the same behavior towards me. In Machiavelli's world, knowledge is power, and someone who cannot control power is not trustworthy. If you really want to know a person, wait for their interest to change, because people, most of the time, act according to conditions. The same person can be someone else next to the boss, someone else next to their subordinates, someone else with their friends. Machiavelli interprets this as follows. Some people do not have principles. They only have calculations of interest. They can stand by you today because it serves them. But tomorrow, when someone more powerful emerges, it won't take long for them to switch sides. Most people describe themselves as loyal, but Machiavelli evaluates people not by their words, but by the choices they make in risky moments. If a relationship is only important as long as it provides gain, that person is not trustworthy, because that loyalty has a price. There were people I stayed friends with for years and thought I knew, but actually all it took was for difficult conditions to occur. Observing people within these conditions allowed me to meet their true identity. Some people seem very loyal to you, but according to Machiavelli, excessive loyalty can also be dangerous. True loyalty is usually quiet, but some people constantly express loyalty, because loyalty, for them, is not a value, but a tool. Seeing loyalty from people in most cases strokes one's ego and makes one feel good. Thus they appear more trustworthy to us. True loyalty looks calm. Fake loyalty, on the other hand, is often showy. Now we come to one of Machiavelli's most disturbing warnings. There are some people. They seem to fear nothing. They take risks. They don't care about rules. They don't think about the consequences. At first glance they look brave, but Machiavelli concludes, if fear is completely absent, morality also weakens, because fear is an important emotion that regulates human behavior. People often don't do bad things because they fear the consequences, but some people feel this mechanism very weakly. These people sometimes look attractive, but it could also mean they are not afraid to harm you, and people with a weak sense of responsibility are the most unpredictable people. Machiavelli was trying to understand human nature, And he concluded, people are not completely good, but they are not completely bad either. People depend on conditions. That's why Machiavelli suggests looking at people's behaviors rather than what they say. A person's character appears in their choices, not their words. That's why I don't trust even people I see as good highly, because being good and being trustworthy are not always the same thing. Now let's go back to the beginning of this video. Think of the people who harmed you in your life. Remember the moment you first met them. Probably at that moment. They didn't look dangerous, maybe sincere, maybe trustworthy, maybe close. Because people rarely present themselves as bad people. True character emerges slowly. And sometimes this realization comes too late. Machiavelli's warning begins exactly here. Trusting people is not wrong, but misreading people can be very costly. And perhaps the most disturbing question is this. When you think of the people in your life, do you really know them? Or do you just think you know them?